Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Perry. My guest today is Randy Spelling. Randy grew up in one of Hollywood's wealthiest and most recognizable families. His father, Aaron Spelling, produced over 200 shows, including runaway hits like Starsky and Hutch, Charlie's Angels, Fantasy Island, The Love Boat Dynasty, Melrose Place, and countless others. Collectively, these shows helped define American pop culture for over 4 decades, from the late 60s to the early 2000s. But having grown up in one of Hollywood's wealthiest and most recognizable families, Randy knows firsthand that money and fame don't guarantee happiness. Now a respected speaker, life coach and author, Randy has honed his natural intuitive abilities over the last 17 years, coaching and helping people from all walks of life see through a new lens. Using group coaching, one-on-one sessions, customized VIP days, and various group programs, Randy shows people choices they often didn't realize they had. This allows them to create more freedom, success, presence, and happiness in their lives. Welcome, Randy.
Thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
Few people can imagine what it was like to grow up the way you did. What are some of the biggest misconceptions? I mean, you were the center of the world for decades.
It's so funny to hear that you were the center of the world for decades. I think some of the misconceptions, well, let me start by saying, yes, it was big. There was glamour. There was glitz. There were things looking back that were out of the norm and very incredible and amazing. But at the end of the day, we are human beings, and you always hear these what fall into the platitude realm of, you can't take anything with you, and you don't have anything if you don't have your health. I think we forget sometimes because we pedestal money and fame in society and celebrity. And growing up, you're still wondering, who am I? How do I fit in? Wanting love, wanting affection, wanting to matter and not be so awkward in the teenage years, and be self-conscious. All of those things are kind of innate to human behavior. So, yeah, I think it's those are the projections, like everything was easy and it must have been incredible. And I would say to someone, it was incredible. And there were parts that were not incredible. And I think that's what gets missed because people only look at the curated feed of one's life versus all of the other things behind that feed.
What were some of the biggest drawbacks to living in an environment like that?
Well, I don't know that it's like this for everyone. For me, although I saw my parents a lot and we were around as a child, I would say I would love to have seen them more. I would love to have spent more time with them. There were times that I felt lonely. I mean, it was before the big house called the manor that we lived in. We lived in another house that was smaller, but still big. And I remember my room was sort of off to the side away from everyone else's. Like to get to my sister's, for instance, you had to go down about 6 stairs, up another little flight and around the corner. So that could feel quite far. And it felt lonely and a bit isolated. And again, it wasn't a woe is me childhood, but there were times where, it felt lonely. I would say the most confusing thing would be when celebrities and people would come in the house and I could tell that they had this mystique around them. They were charismatic in the way that everyone watched them and reacted to them. It was like, oh, they're someone. This is someone special. Yet, because I was empathic, I could feel people's feelings and energy. It was very confusing because I would sense that they were unhappy or that something was off. So it didn't match up between how people had such reverence for them, but yet there was something misaligned with them.
And how did you make sense of that over the years? It's interesting that you're mentioning this because one of the gals I interviewed is an animal communicator, and she said she could read animals and humans early on, but humans were too confusing because they'd have an outward message and an inward message they didn't match. And
Yes.
she'd get in trouble if she were to talk about the inward things that she was picking up about them. So she blocked out the human communication and just focused on the animals. Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you.
I could see how animals would be easier in some sense. Humans are confusing in by way of how they present. Yeah, again, in social media, you look at someone's feed and then you look at the reel. Everyone's there. Like for instance, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. I would have no idea that, like, to me, I was like, oh, they're the couple, and then all of a sudden they just split. You don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So you asked, how did I make sense of this?
Yeah, how did it play out? How did you start to formulate your experience of life going from being an empath and having these incredible, sought after, admired people, and you're picking up different messages that don't mesh with the outside world? How did you navigate that through junior high school, college, and then later on in life?
I would like to tell you that I navigated it well and graceful, but I did not. um, I didn't understand what I was picking up on and what was happening. And I'm sure you know this in the work that you do. We create stories and fill in blanks when there are blanks. So a lot of my blanks ended up being, it must be me. The reason why something is wrong in this relationship, the reason why I'm not getting something that I want, it must be me. That's the way that I can make sense of it.
That's what
So,
do.
what was that?
That's what kids do.
That's what kids do. So, I did the same thing, created a lot of narratives and stories, and I pushed down a lot of the intuition and a lot of what I was sensing. Not consciously. I just went about my life, but in retrospect now I look back and I see how much I tried to just be quote unquote normal, to fit in, to not stand out, to not be noticed. And part of having the last name that I had brought a lot of attention, and I didn't necessarily want the attention. So I would try and play against it by just trying to fit in. It was only when I really started battling with addiction. And again, I didn't know this at the time, but I think what happened, it's like two tectonic plates meeting. I, at 17, really started to discover my spiritual self. That started coming online. I started meditating. I became an avid reader, and all of what I was ingesting and experiencing just felt like home. So you have this one tectonic plate. I'm coming back online, and then you have this image of who I am in the world, who other people think that I am, or who they want me to be, how to fit in, what people want from me, and they started converging, and it created an earthquake, which led to substance abuse and just not dealing with the earthquake that was happening inside until I got out of that, started to get help, and then realized, wait, I have these sensitivities, these gifts. What if I didn't turn away from them? What if I stepped into them? And obviously, that was a longer process, but that was the start of turning to face them and saying, okay, this is who I'm here to be. I'm going to be that, even though it's scary as you know what.
So many people in Hollywood, especially people who grew up in Hollywood, ended up turning to substances to deal with the tectonic plates colliding. How did you get through that? What was the thing that allowed you to um, get sober, um, clean?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was a culmination of things. I don't think it was one thing, but my through line, my major catalyst was one night where I fell to my knees. My dad had passed away. It was a few weeks after, and I was just completely out of control. It was 4 a.m. I'd been up for a day and a half, and I just knew that I didn't want to continue living the way that I was. And it was this moment where I felt such agony deep in my heart, my bones, down to every fiber of my cell that I was supposed to be here for more. Like I wanted to have an impact on people. I wanted to make a difference. And that seed of purpose was there, and I felt it and I connected with it, but I had no idea how to move forward to get that. So I literally just fell to my knees, a practice I wasn't used to doing. And I said, okay, I don't know who can hear me. I called my dad Pops later on in his life. I said, Pops, my guides, God, please, if I'm here for more, if this is true, then please help me because I can't see the way. If I'm not, and this is just what my life is supposed to be, then please take me out. I'm not going to do it myself, but I don't want this anymore. And that started the change that set the change into motion.
And then what showed up for you after that? Who were your mentors that helped guided you through this?
Yeah. I would love to tell you that all these beautiful things started happening. Funny enough, what happened is it got worse in quick succession in the next 2 weeks, to the point that my mom had a birthday party with friends. I showed up. I was wasted, thought I was being friendly to everyone. And later that night, she said, Randy, you really have a problem. And I got so angry and I left. But I knew in that moment, there's no turning back now. Like everything is out. There's no going back. And then the next day, I remember having a conversation with her and saying, I'm going to treatment. And I I did my research to find the treatment center because I'd been once before, but it was an intervention earlier on. And I said, no, I want to pick the places that resonate most with me. Did the research, went in. I was supposed to say 30 days. I wanted to stay a little bit longer. I think I stayed 45 or 50. Um, but, in between even going to rehab and researching, I I passed out like 3 times, drove a car when I had no business driving. I have no recollection of getting home. I remember with little vignettes. I can't even believe that I didn't hurt someone else, made it home, came into my mom's house because I was then staying there because I was leaving in 3, 4 days, and literally just went face first, head down, in the pantry. And later that night or the next night, you would think that would be enough. I did something where I literally think that I died because I had a complete out of body experience that night. I couldn't move my body. And I traveled up, I watched, and I felt such struggle. And then I felt such love and such peace. And the message I got was, this is it. You cannot keep playing around. Do you see your body right now? It's gone. That's why you can't move. And whatever force, whatever showed me, and I got to look and experience, and it scared me. Yes, I felt what people describe. I felt a sense of peace and love, but it also, I looked down and it was like, you are meant to be here and this is it. And 2 days later I went and
And that was the last of substance abuse for you?
I had one relapse after treatment. And then that was it.
I love that story.
Yep.
I've interviewed so many people that had near-death experiences and how they come back with a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. When did you start to fully realize how intuitive you are, and when did other people start to realize that?
I first started to realize that when I started coaching. I'd gone into a coaching program. It was suggested that I coach as many people as possible. So I was a good student. I said, yes, I will. And I practice on friends and cousins of friends. And I remember this, I believe it was my first or second session I ever did. And it was a friend of mine. I told her what I was doing. And she said, okay, great. There are a couple things I want to work on. And I was so nervous. First of all, I was so green. Second of all, I was so nervous that I was doing it right. And after my 60th question, because, there's like question after question after question, she said, you know what, Randy, I've hung out with you many times. I know we were inebriated or whatever, but you're really intuitive. You're really good at like just understanding. Could you maybe just like tap into that? And part of my brain went offline and it was like a permission slip. And I said, okay. And information came and I said what I needed to say. And she had tears in her eyes and got emotional and said, thank you. That.
That's
Now,
so beautiful. I love that.
that was the start. It's not like, from that point, that's all I did, but that was the start, that permission slip of you can trust yourself. Yes, you've learned tenets and you've learned information, but like everything, you have to make it your own and you have to trust yourself. Coaching has been the biggest gift to me. I call it coaching, whether it's coaching, working with people, healing, I don't even know at this point. It's been the biggest gift to me though, because I like to think that I am helping other people and I see that I am, but it's given me the opportunity to really hone in and trust my intuition where information is coming. Because a lot of times I don't know and I'll be guided to ask a question, or I will literally receive images, information, things that don't make sense to me. But when I communicate, it gets us in somewhere that makes sense and it creates change and transformation. And so the direct feedback of seeing, okay, trust your intuition, you are being guided, that has helped me to learn that I can trust it.
Do you get that permission slip from everybody that you work with? Do you find that you go into kind of a meditative state before you work with somebody? Is there any way in that you find is most useful for you?
That's a great question. I have a little process that I do before I work with people.
Would you walk us through that? Just what does it look like to reach out to Randy and have Randy help you with your stuff?
Right. Well, in terms of working with people, I think what you're asking is about intuition, yeah?
Yeah. But when you're working with somebody, how do you set it up so that you can get that maximum flow with people?
So I talk to everyone before I say yes to working with them. I don't just have people unless they're smaller offerings that I have where there's a lot of people and I don't need to fully understand what's going on with someone. But for someone who I'm working with privately or in small group coachings, I always like to talk to people because I want to make sure that this is a good fit and I'm the person to help them. I always get a yes. Sometimes I have gotten a yes when my logical mind is telling me no, and vice versa. Sometimes I will get a no, even though there's a part of me that is like, I could do this. I could make a difference. They might be better suited for someone like you or another professional. And it's just, so I have to take ego out and really just trust in what I'm hearing. Um, so I like to get the lay of the land to know what someone really wants, not just what they're struggling with, but what it is they want, what they want to feel, how they want to be, how they want to show up in their lives. And then before each session, I just do a very short, maybe 2-minute practice where I always open up this container for people when I start working with them. And what I say is, may this container be set. I open up this space that anything that comes into their field of consciousness, anything that they're experiencing is for their highest good, for their highest evolution. And help me to understand and see what that is so that I may be guided in the best way to show up for them. And I say a few more things. And so that space is already created. And I'm sure you might see this with your work too, is once that container, that energetic container is there, a lot of they'll have dreams, they'll hear a message, they'll see it on a t-shirt, but it hits them in a different way because they're paying attention more. And I think part of this work is not just for the outcome and the result of what they want, but also to know themselves, to get in touch with their intuition, to be able to understand their guidance so that they don't always have to rely on outer sources to get information, get answers.
I'm a big fan of anybody that gives people their power back.
Yes.
Your intuition, does it come through, or is it things that you hear? Is it just a feeling? Are there pictures that you see? What is the intuition like from your end?
How does it show up for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I had the intuition doing acupuncture as well, and I would call it playing an invisible piano. People would say, gosh, how did you know to go to that point in my body? And it's just like tuning a radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. Trust is a huge part of it. The better you get at it, the more familiarity you have with it, the more you can just trust that the container will allow whatever needs to bubble up to bubble up.
Yes. I love that. Playing knowing which keys to go to. It is very much like that. So I'll answer your question, but I like to share a story. Is that okay?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. So just this morning, I was at a store here called Trader Joe's. Um, and I was doing my shopping. I got sucked into an autumn colored pumpkin and some other fall things. And then as I was going to my car, I was thinking about this interaction that I had earlier in the day, and I was a little bit frustrated, a little bit annoyed. I was in my head. And then a woman about 10 feet from me, she was older and she had finished loading groceries in her car and she was taking her cart to go back. And in the middle of my thinking, I get that. And the best way I can describe this is, those ships that go through ice and icebergs and they're built just so where they just slowly and steadily just plow through. That's how my intuition shows up for me, is that it comes through in such a way that I just listen now. It's whether I'm hearing it or whether it's like a knowingness, but it's a thought that comes in my mind and just like plows through everything else. And that was, go ask her if she wants her cart taken back to the other carts. I would love to tell you that this is just my practice that I do all the time when I see older people, but I don't. I'm kind and I'm nice to people, but that's not my norm. But I listened. I said, I'm like, yeah, okay. Excuse me. I'm going to take my card back. Do you want me to take your card back? And she turns to me and she says, oh, dear, thank you so much. You probably can't see, but I am just recovering from cataract surgery and the sun is really hurting my eyes.
Mm.
That would mean so much to me. And I said, sure, no problem. And she said, oh, bless you, just bless you. And I said, no, not a problem. Have a great day. And I took her cart back. And to me, that is just a great example of, I could be in my head, I'm trying to work something out, but intuition will just come through, whether it's something that I hear, something that I feel, or it's just a knowingness. But I know I have to pay attention.
I love that. I love that. Give us some more examples. I love that.
More examples. Okay. Um, I had uh, oh gosh, there's so many. Hold on, let me pause. Let me think of a really, really, really good one that I have not shared. Well, there was one the other day where a friend of mine who is a medium heard a podcast episode I was on with John Edward. He was on my podcast Oldish, and he kind of called me out a little bit for not saying that I'm intuitive or psychic in some way. He was sharing a story about himself, and he was like, and then there's this guy who, when he's being interviewed, is stumbling over his words to not say these things. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is John Edward. What's happening right now? And he kind of got me to say, you are what you are. You should say. And I said, yeah, but that feels like so much pressure. And I don't know. And a friend of mine, she said, I'd love to gift you a session. Would you ever want to like play around honing in? And I thought, sure. Okay. So the other day we did this session where she said, have you ever tried automatic writing? I said, oh, maybe once or twice, but I sometimes do automatic drawing to get in touch with my intuition. Or, I'll ask a question and I'll write something. So this was like next level, but the guidance was for me. And then she said, okay, so let's switch to me. And I started to feel so much pressure. I felt performance anxiety, like, oh, okay, I don't know. And then I asked, and I got this saying, just sit and have a soda. And I'm thinking, what? That doesn't make any sense. I don't know. And so I had to say this out loud, and my heart is beating out of my chest thinking, I know this probably means nothing. I'm probably making this up. And I said, I don't know. It says just sit and have a soda. And she started laughing, saying, oh my God. Okay. So I get this same phrase sometimes. And I won't say any more, but again, something so random that I let come through. And and that's why I think I'm so happy that we're having this conversation. I really do believe that everyone has this intuitive ability. And I know people just say that. Yes, people are more disconnected from it. Yes, it feels farther away, but we all have this ability in the wiring. I think some of us just pay attention to it or go deeper into it and hone it more. But it is really exciting and starts to feel kind of mystical and magical when you are in touch with it, because I don't feel so alone. Or I guess what I'd say is so stuck in the human. There's something more that I'm reminded of when I'm practicing this.
I love that, and it does seem like, because I've had people on the show that, had died and come back and had, uh, profound mediumship experience, abilities, and it's often those random things that lets the person they're communicating with know that they're actually having this communication because it's completely unexpected and unique. That's really cool. Um, can you tell us some stories of people that you've worked with that you were able to help them shift by connecting with them intuitively? Kind of some of the things that you help them get over. What are some of the kind of juicy, interesting cases that you've participated in?
Sure. Um, Gosh, I'm one client I'm thinking of. She was just feeling blah. She wasn't exercising as much. She was eating foods that she knew wasn't making her feel good. The very, very interesting thing is, this seemed to most people would be like, okay, straightforward, like very coaching 101, right? Making better choices, motivation, what's playing into making these decisions. But I don't just do surface level. So we started working, and I'm guided to go to like this very deep place, and she didn't look up for a little while, and she just wasn't ready to discuss something that came up. And I said, okay, I totally honor that.
When you say something that came up, you had a vision of something that had happened to her, or
I was guided to ask her a question completely unrelated to what she was presenting. And this other thing presented itself. And to protect anonymity, I will leave out a lot of the details here, but there was family stuff, there was estrangement, upsetness, all of these really deep things that she had not worked through. And within a 3 month, we worked together for 6 months. Within a 3 month period, I watched this person lighten up to the point that it was like how Stella got her groove back. If like everything started changing, she started changing. But the symptoms were that, like, the byproduct was she started changing the way that she ate, exercising, making better choices. But she could talk about what was going on. She could look at me. She was addressing it. She was also making phone calls around it and really dealing with things head on, to the point where um, her relationship changed, how she dressed changed. She was working from home. She didn't have to go into the office. She went into the office dynamic changed. A new business got open. Like, all of these things started changing and opening up as a result of this kind of core thing that was not presented at first, but had to come up in order for those other things to happen.
beautiful. I love that. So people see you once a week? Is it an hour session? What do the sessions look like? Are you asking questions? I mean, you seem to have this nice ability to tune into the thing that seems to be tripping people up. Uh,
Yeah. Okay. I love the logistics and getting into the nitty gritty. So, my typical way that I work with people is it's a 6 month package. Um, Look, if someone comes to me and they're like, I need to make this one decision and whatever, then I'm not going to hold them to a set. Like 3 months, 2 months seems like a better fit. I usually don't do session by session. And it starts at working with people 2 times a month. So every other week. I do encourage them to text me, email me. We communicate in between sessions because what I find is when someone is working on something big, we have to deal with what's coming up in real time. And as I said, when we're opening up that container of energy, there's going to be things in their life. Something might come up in their relationship, something might come up with their child or the way that they're talking to themselves, or they might have a realization. If we can work on that in real time in between the session, then the sessions aren't the typical therapy session where 30 minutes is used just catching up on the week or two, and then you might have a little bit of time after that to make some headway.
What do you feel like is the thing that most is blocking people? What are most people struggling with that this methodology seems to be so helpful for?
Beliefs about themselves, narratives that they have told over and over, stories. And I wish I could distill it to just that because there's other entry points that revolve around that. But I would say at the crux, this is never going to happen for me. What if the worst happens? Catastrophizing. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. All of these themes. But it's one thing to be like, okay, that's a belief. I'm actually more interested in some of the story attached to the belief because just going in and looking at that one belief, sometimes changing belief with a new belief can be hard. But stories are malleable. They're like clay. You can mold it in just a little bit of a shaping, or you put a hand in and all of a sudden it completely changes. You go from a static picture that's frozen in time. And someone goes, this happened to me and this is who I was, and I wasn't loved or I wasn't given attention. And all of a sudden you look at other elements to understand why that person treated you that way or why you needed this in your life, even though you have to deal with the feelings around it to not just bypass that, but to look at other angles and perspectives enough so that that static picture now becomes one of those live pictures, like on the phone when you touch it and you see the before and after. So you see that one freeze frame and everyone's going, but you see the before and after and that life was happening. And I think I'd love to know your take on this. I think we really get stuck in these crystallized and frozen stories. And when they start to thaw, you see things differently, so much so that life changes.
Okay, I'm grinning ear to ear because I mean, you do see the irony that you come from America's biggest storytelling family.
True.
I think that's wonderful. You're helping people. Your dad was famous for telling stories to all of the world, and you're helping people rewrite their own stories.
Yes. Well, thank you for recognizing that. And I feel that that moment where I fell to my knees, I had no clue, Tara. I had no clue that my life was going to go in this trajectory, but it's what I wanted. It's what I felt. I want to make an impact. And, I feel really grateful and just happy that I get to do this every day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Helping somebody change, and I was just again grinning because it's the belief system, and of course, right in the middle of the word belief is the word lie.
Yes.
So when you have a story that is not serving you, and again, when it's below the level of your consciousness, which most of that stuff is hanging out in the subconscious mind, um, it doesn't matter what happens to us. It's our story that we create about ourselves, the world, and other people that ends up hurting us.
Yes. When you were saying that, I just had a thought. Um, Beliefs are so powerful, and we see this in the world now, whether it's political, whether this belief in what you know. And I would urge everyone listening, just for fun, if you want to play around with this, great. If this doesn't feel fitting for you, then recycle it, compost it, throw it away. Um, even with beliefs about the world, beliefs of how things are, why they are the way that they are. I think know yourself, have a stance, of course, but please reserve just a little bit and stay open to the fact that we may not know. There's something else that we might not know. Because I think that even if it's something good, even we're having this great conversation. I'm so enjoying this. I'm loving being here with you. And I might have this belief about intuition or belief about what I'm supposed to do in the world. But I also reserve that right that could change tomorrow based off of an experience I have or, information that I get. And I think that's a great place to be because, again, in that sense, what I like to practice is malleability, that we don't get so stuck and so set in what we know that there's no room to know more.
Well, there's that old Zen saying about if your cup is full, you can't put anything else in there. It's
Right.
you have to empty the vessel before you can fill it up. And the last Dr. Joe event that I was at, he started the whole 10-day event with this saying, the chances that you are perceiving reality correctly is 0.
Right.
And when
Exactly.
you get into quantum physics and, what we perceive and what our puny little conscious minds are able to process 40 bits of information per second, which is like listening to the 3 people have a conversation, that's nothing compared to what's available.
Nothing.
Where on earth did you get that message to help that woman with her cart? That was completely somewhat out of character for you. There's a
Right.
greater intelligence, and if you think you already know it all, how are you gonna get that message?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's where I think like some of the like being humble, some humility, and like having reverence for life, for intelligence, for whatever is beyond what we can know and see and sometimes even perceive is really helpful.
And having curiosity and laughing. I interviewed
Totally.
Dr. Richard Bandler, who trained Tony Robbins, and during the interview, he was laughing, and I said, "What's the role of laughter in healing?" And it lights up different parts of your brain.
It does. Something fun that I used to practice with people is skipping.
Love it, love it.
Walking down the street, take someone who might be having a bad day or is really in their head about something, and skipping as an adult, because adults don't normally skip, but if one is able to, big, like exaggerated skipping. And what I would watch is people's physiology start to change through movement and through laughter. They would start laughing, their eyebrows would be up, and it would literally change the state of their brain like that.
It's hard to frown when you're skipping.
It is hard to frown when you're skipping. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's interesting, I'm actually studying facial acupuncture right now, and the way our face is actually informs our brain about our
Yes.
so people do all this Botox stuff and they can't there's literally emotions that they're cutting themselves off from if they can't, wrinkle their brow or, do all this stuff, which I think is fascinating.
Yes. I had a year-long psychology class that I went to. And there's many tools that I learned from it, but one in particular always stuck out to me. And it was all about facial patterning and gestures that we do, how we are reading people, how other people are reading us. And we practiced this one tool, and it was called eyebrows up. And it was literally going like this, eyebrows up. And my girls were young, and I remember doing it to them. We'd be in the car, and I would say, girls, eyebrows up. And everyone would do it, and immediately you would smile because when you do this, it creates this reaction that gets you to smile. It's very powerful.
I love that. If you could go back and talk to 10-year-old Randy for a minute, what would you say to him?
Oh, 10-year-old Randy. I would first give him a hug. I would sit with him and I would say, it's going to be okay. You are wonderful the way that you are. You don't have to change anything about yourself, and life will be good. Life will be okay. Just remember who you are and always, always be aligned with that.
Love it. What would you like the whole world to know?
You are way more powerful than you realize. And my belief, my perspective, but I believe that we are these beings first, second, having this human experience. And if you want to play around with becoming the identity of this other being, having this human experience, life can become really interesting. And I think sometimes in this world, things can get very heavy and very hard. So it's not all light and fun. It can get very heavy and very hard. And sometimes tuning in to knowing that you're having a human experience and identifying with something greater can create a little bit of a wedge, a pause to look at things and go, who am I? This experience is interesting. Where is my power? Where can I find agency? What can I affect in me and around me to create the change that I'm looking for?
Beautiful. I love to say we stand on the shoulder of giants. Who are some of the teachers in the world today, or maybe that have passed, that you have drawn wisdom and support from?
Wow, so many. Um, I have had wonderful mentors through the years. I would say my father and mother have both been incredible teachers to me, for me, in different ways. Um, I've taken bits and pieces from each one of them. Um, I have some other mentors, one who I affectionately call Ma, who has mentored me and taught me a lot through the years. Um, and honestly, I mean, having this conversation, Dr. Joe, we were talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza. Like, I I don't pretend that I am recreating a wheel of any kind. I think there's so many wheels and designs that have been created, and um, I'm pulling it. I hope I give credit appropriately every time I pull from someone I try, because we're all in this together, evolving together, and yeah, there's been incredible people.
What's like the number one book that you would recommend to somebody that would help them get from, in general, from where they are to where they want to go? What's been one of the most useful books for you?
I can't believe I'm going to say this. This sounds awful, but I'm going to say it. The book that I'm writing right now, it, I think is going to be the most helpful book for me that I have read, because in bringing it through and bringing it out, it has changed my life. Um, th- so that aside, I remember reading The Alchemist in 3 days,
Mm,
and it was there was something about it. It was a story, and there was simplicity in it, but how it points to synchronicity. I love the fact that there are all these messages within the story, and I think it's very easily digestible. And if you really try and take in all of the messages in that book. I think it's a great example of becoming the hero in your journey, of realizing how and where you might be being guided, and that everything is happening for you, even if that's such a hard pill to swallow. And it doesn't look beautiful and it's really messy or hard or painful. You're on this ride, and things show up when they need to show up.
And yes, it is very hard to see when you're in the thick of it. But what's so interesting when you talk to people and evaluate yourself when we've been through something so difficult, there's some gift there that was so worthwhile.
Always. There always is. And even if you can't see the gift, right? Because I know there's people who have tragically lost people, and saying, oh, well, life is happening for you, not to you, feels so horrible and condescending, and it's just hard to make sense of. But sometimes, even if you just can't make sense of it at all, it's a redirect, or you have to go somewhere else, or for whatever reason in this life that we're living, that is meant to be lived. I don't pretend to know why, but again, we are having this experience. It's a play. And sometimes on stage, things go south. And you can try to make sense of it. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you just have to ad lib as best you can and roll with it.
What's the name of your book? Is it out or is it coming out?
It's not out yet. I don't want to share the title just yet because it's not out. But I will absolutely let you know when it's coming out.
Your dad being so incredibly world famous, what are the biggest gifts you got from him?
Hmm. Creativity, compassion, sweetness. My dad had a way of turning dad jokes, simple simple things, right? He would say dog backward is spelled God. He'd write a little sticky note and just say, I'm really proud of you. There would be these little moments, and he kind of talked like this. He had my voice is turning into his more and more as I get older, but he had this gentle, sort of Southern gentleman, warm way of speaking. And sometimes he'd come up with these little things that when you'd say it, it just would hit you in the heart. He was very much, even though he was probably in his head a lot, I think he brought through intuitively a lot of creativity to entertain the world. And hopefully, I learned a little bit of his storytelling, and hopefully, I've learned how he trusted his creativity to take action on that. I can take action on the creativity that comes through me and impacting people how I can, just like he impacted people the way that he did.
Love it. Has your definition of success changed from when you were a child to today?
Yes.
And how would you describe that?
Um, to be honest, I don't even know if I had a definition of success as a child. I'm sure my definition was money, fame, doing really well, or being powerful. When I started to act, that's when success started to become really defined for me, because it was, how successful are you as an actor? Are you on a hit show? Are you doing movies? How much money are you making based off of your roles? That was the benchmark of success, depending on what those metrics were. And then I went into the music business, and there were certain metrics to hit in the music business. So I would compare to people who were successful. And I would always compare to what success looked like. And it was some form of money, some form of financial freedom, uh, And then when I started coaching, same thing. Like there's Tony Robbins, and then there are all these people who are big in the field, comparing myself and going, well, my client load doesn't look like Tony Robbins, and I'm not getting paid what he's getting paid. And as I've had children, I've continually redefined my definition of success, in that I do think that life is short and it's finite. Um, I'd be lying if I told you that there weren't some metrics in there, because, I'm running a business. I work in other businesses. Um, I can be entrepreneurial, and that's real. That's in there. However, my real definition of success is being connected with myself as much as I can, because I know if I'm connected with myself, I am a better father and I will be more present with my daughters. I know that if I'm connected with myself, I will be a better coach when I'm working with people. I know that if I stay connected to, I'm saying myself, intuition, I'm in the flow of life. I'm letting synchronicity happen. I'm letting myself move in ways that I otherwise wouldn't move. And the outcome of that are things that I couldn't even think of. To me, now that is success. The byproducts are happiness, joy, all of that. But I think in order to get there, I have to be as connected as I possibly can to my integrity and my authenticity and my truth.
You had a front row seat to external success. Is there a cautionary tale on putting too much emphasis on that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a dangling carrot. My cautionary tale is just like the brand new fad diet, but then next week there's another one. Success without meaning. If you're chasing a metric, you will always continually chase another metric. Your human nature, our field post, our end zone will continually move further and further and further back. You achieve something, we're going to want to achieve something different. That's great. I think achievement is wonderful. But make sure that you don't think that the car or the house or the soulmate is going to then complete you. I shared a story the other day where I got this furniture set outside. And in my mind, I was like, oh, we're gonna spend so much time out here. And I could envision it in my mind. I'm gonna feel more peaceful, and there's gonna be a water fountain and all these things. And then I realized something that helps to sit out there more. I've created the environment. But is the couch bringing me peace? Is the couch literally making me feel happy? No. It's an inanimate object that's there to help me, but it's the way that I'm thinking in that moment. It's how I'm feeling. It's what I'm doing while I'm sitting on the couch that's going to bring me what I want. Same thing. You could have the Range Rover, be like, that's all I want is a Range Rover. The Range Rover is not going to bring you how you most want to feel.
Yeah, I love it. It's an inside job.
It's an inside job.
Randy, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you, stay in touch with you? I know Oldish is your podcast. What are the best avenues for people to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, it's my website is randyspelling.com. And I'm very active on Instagram, also Randy Spelling.
Thank you so much. And folks, share this with your friends. Leave us a note in the comments. And of course, subscribe. And we'll see you on the next episode of Next Level Healing. This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions are expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.